Where are you joining us from?
I'm joining you from Miami, Florida.
Wow. So how did you hear about us?
Well, I work for SovereignPort. I am their customs broker and freight forwarder. I handle the logistics and transportation for the company.
Okay, excellent. Excellent. Well, again, we're starting this because we're finding that there's a lot of really interesting information out there that is not making it into the, the sort of, I would say, the conventional channels, but
Yeah,
there's
that's
a
going to
world
change,
out.
though.
It's changing, right?
Yeah,
So
we're going to change it.
that's kind of what we're trying to set up to do here, is because we're all over the map, and there's a lot of information that's sort of falling through the cracks that we want to get out there to people, and that's why we're starting to do this. Patrick is in Spain. I'm in Germany, so the people that are going to join the call very, very quickly are, again, all over the map. So thank you very much for joining us. How did you find us? Through Josh, or did you find us through the LinkedIn feed? Which one?
Well,
he works for the
through
company.
Josh. I work with Josh.
You work with Josh. Okay, I'm sorry. Right.
Yeah,
okay.
yeah. I work for a company right now called Interport Logistics. I'm a customs broker and a freight forwarder. I'm the third generation. I've been doing this for 40 years.
Awesome.
When I met Sarah about 1.5 years ago, and she dropped this on us, wanting to use our foreign trade zone, I just thought it was the greatest idea in the world, and I decided to make it happen, or try to at least.
That's totally awesome. Well, thank you very much for joining us. We're going into, I think everybody is going to be joining us one by one. I see 3 of us in here. So how is,
I'm early, because when I was a kid, if I wasn't to work on time, my dad would dock my pay, even though I was too young to drive. So I'm usually early when I get to any place or I have a meeting.
Well, we're also learning how to drive new technology, and in fact, we were meeting earlier today to figure out how I could make my background look a little bit more snazzy, but not quite yet. It's going to be an upgrade that happens, but
I shaved.
Huh?
I shaved.
Awesome. So how is COVID treating you guys down in Florida?
Safe. My company Interport has been open the whole time because we're considered essential. We've cleared and transported into the U.S. over 40 million masks. So we've been busy doing that almost 24/7 since it started. My family's healthy. My parents are older, so they're kind of self-quarantined in the house, and if we have to give them something, we just put it in the mailbox for them. So we're all safe, thank God.
That's good to know.
How's it treating you guys in Germany? I hear that it's starting to dissipate a little bit.
Well, it does feel like it feels. Hold on one second. It feels like it is definitely changing, right? I mean, there people are running around with masks, but things are opening here. So, I believe we have just been joined by Sarah. Welcome, Sarah. Can you hear us? Hi, Sarah. Very nice to see you. Thank you very much for joining us. We're waiting for other people to come in. Okay. Where are you today? It looks like you're very tropical.
George and I are both in Florida.
Oh, you're in Florida. Oh, awesome.
Yes. This will be the 1 hour I don't have the mask on.
Oh, it can't be that bad, right? So you must be doing all of your stuff by phone, right?
Oh, everything's by phone, especially since we had 10,000 new cases yesterday, which is fun, spectacular.
Well, it's not quite, to answer your question, it is not really quite like that here in Germany. It definitely feels like, it's over, and the Germans are happy about kicking its ass, except for the fact that they're reserving the right to, put certain towns in lockdown. So that's
I'm trying to behave so I can come to Germany and Canary Islands soon. So trying to behave, keep my mask on so we can jump on a plane in the next few weeks.
Yeah, Spain has decided that they're not going to allow, most of the EU, I think, has decided they're not going to let folks in from the US for now.
Mm-hmm.
Pretty much. I think it's going to be.
I think that's EU wide, right?
It is EU-wide. The only exception are people in the transportation industry, which includes us. But
Okay.
I don't want to pull that card until it's absolutely necessary, which will be at the end of this month. We're just trying to stay safe and compliant and, you know, get our COVID tests before we jump on a plane.
I'm here. Can you hear me?
So I think that we are there. There are at least 5 of us here. We have not been joined by one of our faithful cohorts and his brother because we had a small personal problem, a death in the family. But the way that this has worked is that we have started these conversations and they have gone in some interesting conversations. So maybe tonight it's going to be just me and Patrick, but I'm assuming that as we go forward, we will get joined by other people. We are also recording this. So I am hoping that your expertise will be not only heard by Patrick and myself, but also the people who are clearly starting to dial in and listen to the stuff that we do online. So by way of
and then
introduction,
of course afterwards we post this on YouTube, so
exactly,
for folks that didn't catch it live or don't catch it live, there's always that opportunity.
So by way of introduction, very quickly, my name is Marguerite Arnold. I'm a journalist. I also have been increasingly a consultant covering the space. I'm an American expat. I live in Germany. It looks like I'm finally getting my German citizenship, but regardless, I'm also sort of involved in this space, not only documenting what's going on as a journalist, but involved in some startups and tech stuff as well. However, I think that, you know, as this market evolves here with all of its quirks, there are people who really want to see this evolve. And that is one of the reasons why CannaClear, which is one of my tech startups, decided to work with Patrick or Mike Doherty, or both, and Patrick, on CannaList.eu. We decided to work together on a project to see how we could start to bring some of the, I would say, inherent in the room expertise that is not necessarily known about into a place where people could find it. So what we're doing with Clearly Cannabis is we're having these conversations where we were inviting experts on and asking you guys questions, and then if there's anybody else in the audience, they can ask questions too, or if not, for Patrick's comment earlier, we're also recording this. So what we can do, what we're gonna be doing is putting this on social media and allowing people to get a little bit more of a down and dirty understanding of some of the real issues in this industry as it develops beyond the fluff.
Indeed. Yeah, very smart.
So that is our goal. And I thought by, you know, I met, have Josh, I'm trying to, I think we met, I guess on LinkedIn. Regardless, we met, and I thought that what I heard Josh was doing was super, super interesting. So maybe to sort of kick this off, I mean, I know that Sarah, Josh, and you guys work together, but maybe one of you can start off with an introduction about what SovereignPort is doing in the cannabis space, specifically in the import and export area, in and out of Europe and to the US.
Absolutely. Go ahead, Sarah. Do you want to go ahead and start?
No, you're fine. Josh is actually our EU director. He's helping get everything established in the EU, which is amazing.
And he's awesome.
Yeah, he's phenomenal. I'm so glad he's on our team. George and I actually about 2 years ago started opening up customs. We are a logistics solutions company. We put together logistics solutions and customs clearance for CBD specifically. And so George and I started finding ways to bring it into the US. He got a lot of, he wrote it. What did you,
I wrote a couple of customs rulings on the tariff classification for it. And I'm pending some regulatory rulings that haven't been responded to yet to help with the methodology and clear up the path to compliance for everything that has to do with hemp, its derivatives, its isolates, everything.
So when you say that, is that exporting into the United States? Is that exporting out of the United States?
Both.
Well, and so we started with the importation because the U.S. wasn't growing yet. So we had a huge need to import, and everyone was trying to get it here, but there weren't clear classifications on it. So when the U.S. grew and we had an abundance of it, then the farmers didn't have a way to actually make money on it. The prices dropped. So the U.S. has great prices on industrial hemp and on CBD, but not so much in the EU, not so much in Canada. So then I just spent most of 2019 working with George, popping over in the EU, working with different countries to open up customs there. And that's Josh came in just at the perfect timing, and we started opening up. Josh was hugely influential, the key to opening up an EU port. And now we're both an EU company and a US company, and we have ports in the US and the EU, which makes it a lot easier to transport, you know, CBD products back and forth.
Well, let's just back this whole thing up, because again, a lot of people who have been aware of the ins and outs of this industry have known actually that it was not possible to do what you were talking about, certainly in terms of exporting out of the US. Let's start there. Until something happened called the passage of the 2018 Farm Bill, which basically started, for those of us, you know, those people who are listening overseas. So in 2018, there was a federal bill passed in Congress that started to lay the groundwork for the federal, I would say, oversight and regulation of hemp, even though obviously it pushed it into the state level to regulate on one hand. But what's interesting to me, and has been since I met Josh and began to learn about what you guys were doing, was that you saw that opportunity and said, okay, export. So why don't you, you know, one of you tell us, or maybe all of you, tell us the story about how you guys decided to start exporting hemp from the United States to Europe, because that is a big story.
It was just supply and demand. I mean, 2018 Farm Bill happened. It couldn't have been better timing. And we needed a lot of imports. We had zero here. But when the farmers were able to grow as of January 2019, a lot of people grew. So we have an abundance. And so no one was buying it in the US. They had it. So who were our buyers? Not South America. They're growing it in abundance. Our buyers were South Africa, EU, Canada. Australia, not so much yet due to regulations, but there's a huge need all over the EU, because it's hard to find ample biomass for these processors to process at a good level and create profits. So that's, I mean, it's just a supply and demand that got us set up, and it's a very difficult journey, but we're here, and there's a lot of details and laws that, you know, legal things we've had to jump through, but it's an ability now. And I know George has worked really hard on it. He knows most of the legal aspects of it.
Well, I think the way we started was I went and I had a meeting from port director on down in the airport in Miami. And I basically told them, look, they've just made this legal. People are going to try smuggling it. Why don't we just start finding a way to make this compliant, so you guys know what's going on? It's open kimono, and you don't have a bunch of inspectors just seizing things all over the border. Let's find a path. So from there is where they suggested, and they actually was more than a suggested, to request some rulings, regulatory rulings, and harmonized tariff rulings, and start. And we did, and we started working together. And the U.S. government, and I think most governments anywhere in the world, will write a law and then forget to write regulation, and it's no different here. So basically, our objective is to help write regulation for the import and export of this great commodity through all borders around the world, not only by engaging U.S. customs, but also by engaging German customs, Dutch customs, Spanish customs, and get there and show what we have to offer, that we have a high quality, good substance that's beneficial for on all phases of not only the planet, but the general health of the public, and to eliminate the stigma and have it move freely through all borders.
And what's been the primary pushback?
There really hasn't been a lot of pushback on the federal regulatory level. The FDA still hasn't written any regulation on CBD regarding the thresholds and safety standards for CBD in anything that's, well, whether it's going to be food or cosmetic. So that's on the import side. As long as you're not making any medical claims, they're kind of just watching. They're watching. So, and I'm very open with them. I'm saying, listen, I've got this coming in. We're going to disclaim it. but they have access to the entries. I give them the information so they can look, and we can dialogue along the way. The biggest hurdle, believe it or not, is removing the stigma of the product that the carriers hold. The carriers are afraid that their ships or their airplanes are going to be seized for essentially shipping contraband, and those mines are pretty much the hardest ones that are to change. Although it's happening, they're starting to realize that this is legal. It's legal in the United States now. That there are safeguards with the COAs and labs that we use to protect them from any kind of action by any government.
But
If it
again,
were easy, everybody would do it. Farmers can't tell the difference. If a farmer can't tell the difference between CBD biomass, the smell, the look, all of it, how can a customs agent, how can a shipper? They don't know if they're shipping, cannabis, real THC cannabis, or CBD that's compliant and legal, other than having a COA. So that's where you have to have reputable people who follow all the rules. You have to have a great track record and background. You can't cut one corner. You can't compromise anything with your company and your integrity, or they don't believe you anymore. And so it's been a long haul, but we've done things correctly, which gives us more validity in the market. And so it's easier for transportation companies to trust us because we do it right the first time. We lose business because we won't cut corners. We do it right the first time.
well,
When you come into the EU, you're faced with 20 different member states with 20 different sets of rules. Is that correct? Or is there, and do you go with someone like Germany and hope that they, what they will approve, then you can take to other member states and say, look what Germany did, or no?
Well, that's a general idea. You really have to approach each government. Each government has their own sovereign laws, and you got to follow them. You can't just ignore them and say, well, it's legal here, why can't you do it here? You really have to engage them in dialogue so you can continue that path.
well,
And
let me
Germany's
jump in
one
with
of the
this
most
one.
difficult.
Well,
Go
let me
ahead.
jump in with this one, right? So you guys are actually talking about the nitty gritty, which is the first time that we've actually, had somebody on this conversation that's talked about this. You guys are actually talking about the nitty gritty of actually going to the people who are signing the bill of the lading and et cetera, to make sure that they know that you're there with a legit crop. What I'm fascinated.
This is the backside of better, Marguerite.
Right.
The backside
Exactly.
of better, right? The framework.
Right. So what's interesting to me about, again, from the beginning, that what you guys were doing from what you were describing, Josh, was the fact that you're just doing it, right? You know how the logistics work, and you know who the people are, and you're going out there and you're doing something which is now technically legal. The next question on this one, and I think sort of as a follow-up with Patrick though, is in Germany right now, you have whole German states like North Rhine-Westphalia, where Cologne is located, now deciding that for some reason they are going to follow the EU's non-binding legislation on CBD, namely that it's novel food if it's not pressed, if the oil is not pressed from a seed. So what's interesting about you guys is that you are actually in the logistics end of getting it from A to B at a time when the rules in every single European state are changing. So
I think that's the most interesting part of this. When people say, oh, can you just ship it for me? Okay. From where? To where? Who's getting it? What city? Why do you need to know the city? Oh, because everything is different. And that's why it really pays to have a logistics consultant on your team when you're working with CBD. We had a client who thought they could do it themselves, which is really cute. And they shipped
You charge
their
them
stuff.
more when they think that, right?
Oh, well, they shipped it. They're like, oh, thank you for getting all of our classifications for us. We're just going to ship it to you because there's a party I want to use. They're so much cheaper. And their $400,000 is still sitting on a dock in Germany because they didn't do it correctly. And Germany is one of the hardest countries. So what we're doing right now is we're shipping it into an EU port and clearing it, but then we get EU COAs, we get the government to approve it, and then we see which countries are going to approve it. Cyprus is different than Greece, is different than Italy, is different than Germany, is different than Switzerland, which isn't even in the EU, and people don't realize there's VAT taxes between all these two. And so bobbing this around could cost so much more than you'd ever want to pay for an import if you don't know what you're doing. So you have to bring it in correctly, you have to land it, you have to clear it, You have to strategically decide if it needs to go to Italy, what's the best way to get it there, and how do we meet, you know, expectations on the Italian side, so everything we do is auditable, so no one is upset, so it never gets confiscated. And it's not easy. We make it look easy, but it's not an easy feat.
And how many countries
every month is different.
And how many countries are you currently able to ship into?
That's interesting. I mean, I could sit here and say 200 because I don't know, but it depends on where the supply and demand is. We look every country, if we're a quarter apart, if we're 4 months out from the last shipment, we have to relook at everything. Laws are changing so fast everywhere. Colombia wasn't letting anything out, and now they are. You know, THC seeds weren't allowed out of EU, and now they are. So it changes so much. I might be able to ship into 50 countries today. Tomorrow it's 20, the next day it's 100. So it just depends. I always tell people, let's do a shipment by shipment basis. That's why I say have a team of experts or have a consulting group on hand. Just because you have a route doesn't mean that route's going to stay more than a month.
It always sounds like the matrix of cannabis.
It is. It's fun. And I've got the Matrix guys down here. I've got Keanu Reeves, and who's the other guy? I've got them right here.
Take the red pill.
Yes. Consumer goods in for people, trust me.
Sorry, Patrick, I interrupted you.
It's a lot more fun than bringing in people's consumer goods and furniture in from overseas to just get them through customs. This is a real challenge, and it's a lot of fun.
Well, let me just back up for a second. So I mean, on one hand, this is just, you know, cannabis. It's just a plant.
Yeah.
Right. How is it? And obviously at the flip side, it's a plant with all sorts of stigma, where the rules are changing every single day, where the ins and outs points and who can ship what to whom for what purpose is all in flux all of the time. Right.
Correct.
Is that a fair assessment? So how do you, in a volatile business, how do you try and find a measure of stability? I mean, do you have clients who are repeat clients in Europe at this point? Or do you just say, I'm open for business, give me your bill of lading problem and I'll sort it, you know, and that's it?
Well, go ahead, Sarah.
Well, I think that's where Josh just knocked it out of the park, is having that EU port and being an EU company. Now we're at the point where we just buy the product and we ship it to ourselves and we hold it and then we ship it out from there. I'm not guaranteeing clients, which we could, but I'm insuring my own load and then shipping it to clients. So we do have many clients in Europe, but you know, it takes weeks to get a product over there. And the way we're making it happen is we own the load. And so we own the shipment, we put it into an EU company, and then we distribute from there. And that's how we're, you know, helping get it to our clients without them having the risk or any issues, because we can clear it all.
So let me just back up here. Okay, so let me unpeel this a little bit more. So in the United States, it sounds like you guys are like the shipping and customs logistics experts. But that is not what Josh has been doing here in Europe. Josh, do you want to sort of jump in a little bit and talk about what you've been doing on islands off of Spain?
Correct. I mean, what Sarah and what George have been explaining is simply the backside of better, just on logistically, you know, bringing the framework that's existing in the United States here to Europe, right, to 720 million people. Right. So on the medical side, obviously, yes, or CBD. Now, I'm sure we'll get into the fiber side here in a moment. We do have the largest fiber facility located in Arkansas, which, you know, are the solutions. Working on it. Yes. Yeah. But nonetheless, you know, just the infrastructure that is the United States does not exist here. We've actually seen this since 2016 with recreation happening even in California, yes, just state. But on the federal side, we saw the Farm Bill allowing us to have this conversation now. So we're on this education piece, just like this podcast now, to let people know how things are being done, you know, to be able to create more of a homogenous, you know, type of thinking when it comes to whether it's fiber on the plastic side, on the paper side, clothes, you know, concrete, etc. You know, to be able to actually help countries increase their GDP in this crazy time, but still be able to be medically conscious. So, but that doesn't exist. You don't have consumption levels like you see in California. A store like a Costco or a Ralph's or a Kroger, I mean, I guess Rive or whatever out here would be something that would be similar. You don't see CBD products or medical products offered, you know, to whereas people can even see the upside of not only it being available, but then, you know, having it available and actually see how it can actually help out with health and wellness. So my role is to just kind of spread the news and the message like we're doing here now, but using it off of basis, you know, off of things that, you know, are, yes, you know, taking a painstaking approach to new solutions that now, because of these times, people are forced to look at. So that's my role, is just everything that George and Sarah are saying, I'm just echoing over here. We've seen it, you know, so right now, you know, a lot of times seeing is believing. And that's why we're just educating so that people can take this in for what it's worth. So
Well,
that's my
okay. So to get beyond, and maybe you don't want to talk about specifics, but so basically you have been starting companies in the Canary Islands, right, to enable the shipment of, from what I understand so far, regulated, compliant cannabis biomass from the United States to Europe. And that is how you have been dealing with the bill of sale labeling issues. So in other words, you're bringing American biomass to Europe, and then you're selling it within Europe. Is that correct?
We just found that Spain was probably the most inviting and best market, and having a unique port was the best entry for us to be able to then be able to offer an EU product and to be able to offer to mainland, you know, Europe. You know, are there other places that we're developing? Yes. But, you know, Spain is very friendly, and, you know, they have a huge thriving cannabis market as well, right? But, you know, then once again, I'm in Berlin. We're all here in Germany. The next segue is operating here, but we just found a great solution that makes everyone happy with the Canary Islands.
Yeah,
So,
Josh was on the ground for several months putting together the EU company for SovereignPort, and it's been
correct.
amazing, and it was a great option. And then the wonderful thing is George's family is from the Canary Islands, so he's gotten along with customs really well down there,
Correct.
and we've developed some great relationships on the island, which is good for us, and it's beneficial. It's off of the EU, but it's an EU island, so we're able to stage there and then work within the compliance of the EU before we take it into the mainland.
Well, and then again, that is, sorry to step on you for a second, Patrick, but I mean, what I find interesting also is the fact that, I don't know if you're following the court decision in France, but, you know, there's this tension right now between what's going on at the EU level in terms of how we treat cannabis, even CBD cannabis, and then on the regional country level, there's another discussion. So in Germany right now, you know, Cologne just banned CBD that is not pressed from flowers or leaves. That is very interesting, and I've heard rumors that in fact the entire state of North Rhine-Westphalia is going to do that. The flip side, though, is if you skip a country over in France, there's now a big lawsuit about the ability of local authorities to ban CBD oil import because of what CBD actually is, and the fact that, of course, anybody who knows anything about science or history of plants or food knows that CBD extracted from hemp in particular is not a novel food in any way, shape, or form unless you extract it in a certain way. So what I find interesting is that you're right in the middle of this conversation, not only on the CBD front, but also on the import-export front, as that is interacting with new regulations and new interpretations of laws as they apply to this plant.
And it's challenging. It's challenging like that in the U.S. I mean, we're the United States of America, but every state is different, and every state has states' rights, and they have state rules. And you can drive your product all the way from Colorado in a truck to Florida, and it can get confiscated at the border of Florida because you don't have the right paperwork. So we're used to working inside one country with 50 different rules in each region, and I think that's what brought us a strength. We were able to put that together in the U.S., and we're able to duplicate it over in the EU. I'm it's like anything else. It's newly on the market. The World Health Organization is just now saying it's good. We're just now decriminalizing the stigma of the cannabis plant, and that's fine. But we have people who don't understand what they're doing, or have never seen the plant, or have not worked with the farmers making the laws. So I think hopefully other people who are more educated can start working with governments. I love that we've got the state of Arkansas wanting to work with us about transportation and what the laws should be. You know, I worked with the minister of Uruguay. So I like when people bring in true consultants and find out what's good and what's bad and what's right and what's wrong. They're right. There's a lot of processors who are not doing it correctly. And I wouldn't want to give that to my citizens. But if you have an EU GMP certified facility who is documenting from seed to sale where everything's going, it shouldn't be an issue, and it should definitely not be on the novel food list.
Hey, also, if I could slide in there, isn't a part of this, we're still in the hemp business. I know we can get really, scientific in our conversation, and it can go into so many different exciting ways on the medicine front, but really we're in the hemp business. And Marguerite, we were discussing this the other day. Yeah, we can call it one thing. I think it's semantics. It's still all derived from hemp, right? And even the industrial hemp. And we know there's even 5 different conversations there, right? So I think a lot of the education piece, and even just having what we're discussing, if you say CBD, that goes into that whole nother sphere of, the different laws and regulations. We're really under the 2018 bill, the farm bill that also the EU recognized, why this is such an amazing time. And I think if we keep it simple and just really talk hemp, and keep it at hemp, and yes, let the scientists do what they do. I'm not a scientist, there's some other ways to improve hemp. We let those people do that. Our core job is shipping and logistics, with special needs cargo, which is industrial hemp, for the medical use for fiber, and that's for our clients. And that's where we're bridging the world together. Yes, the Canary Islands, but once again, through, Sarah and what she's been able to create, having, her indigenous, background and connecting the foreign trade zones. We can get into that even on the more of a global front. But, and that goes even to the medical marijuana side. We'll talk about that later. But just on the hemp side, that's where we're just trying to keep it simple, Marguerite, just hemp. And then, yes, there are all these other things and nuances. But, if we can create framework and educate, you have George, working and educating with the customs, and, Sarah, she's continuing to just have these amazing creative, ideas that are allowing us to do what we're doing. So we're matching all the continents together and literally saving the world through hemp, So.
Well, I think it's awesome. I'm sorry to interrupt you. But what I'm saying, what I find interesting is, right, that actually within the EU, it's not just hemp, right? And what I'm interested about is the fact that you're bringing biomass over here, apparently, in an environment where there are actually several different CBD, or if you want to call them hemp markets. So if you're in the industrial hemp space, or you're extracting hemp oil from seeds, that's a very different space than the GMP medically certified side. So my next question, I guess, is, are you bringing biomass over that has been certified in a certain way, i.e. are you bringing biomass over for the industrial market, or are you bringing biomass over that has been differently certified and then selling it? Or are you bringing biomass over and just saying, okay, we have biomass, and letting your buyer say, does it fit these boxes?
Everything's pre-certified and approved before we put it on. There's no way I'm spending millions of dollars to throw it on a ship and not have all the check marks there, right. Especially since it's on my own dime. That's not wise. So we don't say, oh, let's see if a buyer will take it. That's crazy. We have clients that I've had for years who I've known really well, that I've been working with since day one. And we know the requirements of the countries. Every country's different. We make sure it's certified for the countries we already have it sold in. But when new buyers come on, we ensure that it's done correctly. If it's not, we don't sell it. There's no way I'm going to have my name on a box that gets confiscated. It's not going to happen.
I'm going to give you an easy one, though. Here's an obvious question, right? So in the United States, the Farm Bill has basically set out a federal mandate, I guess, for the states of no more than 0.3% THC in hemp. As an example, right? There are some states who are above, there's some states below. You are far better.
It's all 0.3. Yeah, well,
Yeah,
it depends.
federal-
I think that there are a couple
Standard,
states,
0.3.
no, I think that there's a couple states, I'm just looking at this, who are like 0.2% by state law, whatever, they're deviating, right? Whatever, regardless, the federal standard in the United States is 0.3. The federal or sort of regional standards here is 0.2. How do you get around that? Or has that been a problem so
Just
far?
because there's standards here doesn't mean that's how all the biomass is grown. And just because it's US doesn't mean we're not using EU seeds. So anything that leaves here is below, well below 0.2 before it ever even gets on a ship. And we make sure those COAs are in check, and then we have it checked again when we get there. This is what we do. It's an elaborate thing. And I thought it would take us 2-3 weeks to get the first ship out, and it really took us 3 months. And it's because we had to check every box, and there were more details than I had foreseen. But we send out samples to various labs in the UK, or UK, Spain, wherever in the EU. We have them check it to make sure compliance. We have the US COA to make sure compliance. When it lands, we recheck it to make sure compliance. We make sure it's covered. We have all those on site filed. Customs agents know it. Our main, and it's why it took so long to even get us off. There were people importing and exporting CBD before I was, but 70-80% got through. The rest was confiscated. The reason we don't get confiscated is because it takes us longer, but we check every single box and make sure we're doing it correctly. Now, I'm not going to tell you exactly what we're doing right now because we're the only one who can do it, but we are following the rules. We're making sure everything's compliant and everyone's happy. And we're 60 days past due for our first shipment, but it's okay because we're doing it right.
Well, it's on the water and it'll be there shortly. And the carriers didn't even have published rates for it yet. We were the first ones to publish a tariff for industrial hemp from the United States to the EU.
Well, let me ask you the next question, because Patrick is in Spain.
Good job, George.
So Patrick is in Spain, right? And mainland Spain, not an island Spain. I'm curious, number one, are you seeing much business in the biomass business to Spain, or is Spain on your agenda at all? Because I mean, the market there is obviously very different than the one in Germany is very different than the one in Switzerland.
No, we don't have a huge market in Spain yet. I know we're gonna see that change. Most of our clients, our established clients, are not in Spain, but they are in the EU.
Yeah, I mean, Spain is just a different environment, right? I mean, it's set up differently. And my understanding is that no one is particularly motivated to change that. They're kind of happy with the way it is. So what keeps you up at night?
I sleep like a freaking baby.
Good job.
Sleep like a baby. I've got a great law firm. I've got a great staff. George handles anything. He knows. It's funny. We had an issue with the shipment, and I called this DC law firm. They're powerful people. John Bonner, our last Speaker of the House, and the last person over all of U.S. Customs, are attorneys on this firm, and they had 5-6 people on the firm on a phone call talking about this one project, and we had to send them all the paperwork over, and they're looking it over. And you know how the attorneys want to keep looking? They got on the call and they said, there is nothing we can add. George did it so well, it's better than what we would have done it. We can't even imagine anything else you could have done. Our company, he knows what he's doing. It's wrapped up tight. And when I say I sleep like a baby, I snore too. I have 0 issues falling asleep.
So therefore, are you creating this market?
I think the market's creating the market. We're the transportation customs clearance arm. I mean, I have people,
But you're creating how to do it, right?
We know how to do it. That's what we've been doing for years.
Well, what we did was we approached the authorities. Look, this shipment that's on the water now, Customs wanted to take a look, and really everything we move is subject to seizure. I used a tariff rate that Customs asked me to use. The inspector was looking at a tariff rate that he thought we should have been using. Luckily, I had already received the response for the tariff classification that we were supposed to use. I sent it to him. He let it right through. And now we have an established connection with that port in itself with customs. So if we have any issues, we're upfront about it. We actually preempt any problems that may arise through giving them first shot at it, basically. They have the right of first refusal, and we're ready for them. And it's all legal. It's all compliant. Makes them feel warm and fuzzy, which is our objective. And it sails exactly where it when it's supposed to.
So my next question may sound a little stupid, but do you send it by ship or do you ship by air as well?
Well, that depends on the quantity. So far, there are very few steamship lines that want to carry it, even less airlines that want to carry it. That's one of our next hurdles, is to find the air freight carriers for smaller shipments. We're talking about 3 containers right now on a larger project of biomass that's going to be hitting the EU. So you're going to move that ocean. But smaller shipments, maybe samples of isolate or distillate that may be leaving the United States, that's going to have to fly. And finding carriers to move it is actually a greater challenge than federal authorities around the world, believe it or not.
We're shipping pre-rolls to Greece right now just to get their compliance approval before containers go out. So samples always go out, and we've got samples going all over the place, but samples go out and we get it approved, and we make sure the government knows what's going on and the customs brokers know what's going on. And if there has to be amendments written or regulations written, that's what we do. And then we send out the containers. So we're constantly moving new product as samples, different various sizes. But as far as these containers, we shipped at sea because we had so much weight on it. It didn't make sense to go air.
Well, again, I mean, that's one of the reasons I'm asking you these questions is because, for example, Frankfurt is known, where I am, as a major international shipping point, right?
Yeah,
and
of
it's air, right? It's not boat. But I'm wondering, given the fact that you have a position on the Canary Islands, you're in Germany, what position or what percentage, or maybe it doesn't matter for now, is coming by boat? What is coming by air? Would it be, I mean, it almost makes sense that most of it would come by boat, right? I mean, it's a CBD market.
I'd say 90% of everything we're shipping over is probably going by air, but if you go by weight, volume, 90% is going by sea. But like, as far as per shipment, they're smaller shipments. It's a pallet or less. It's testing the waters. It's getting the rulings. It's helping ship samples for our clients. Our containers that we own, we're shipping by sea. And Germany's a fun one. It's a huge shipping port, but I would never, ever in a million years, unless I really wanted to lose product, ever ship anything first to Germany to customs clear it. It's ridiculous. There's so many laws there. You have to customs clear it and then get pre-approval. You got to get it through the EU, and then you get pre-approval from Germany.
This is what's interesting. So what basically you have done is, clearly Germany, big market, we all want to be there, we all want to sell there, but instead of trying to sell it straight into Germany, you have established companies within the Canary Islands to be your European presence. So you ship to Europe first, and then you clear within the EU. Is that basically what you're saying your strategy is? Or?
Yes. So it's not companies, it's SovereignPort. I mean, and there are companies based on the laws of Spain, but they're all named SovereignPort. So it's not like we're, hiding under some crazy company. But yeah, we ship to the EU, we clear it, and it's a lot more detailed than that. It's like, how do you have a baby? I got pregnant and had a baby. It's a lot more detailed than that, but yeah, that's basically what we did. We hooked up with an EU company, and we made an EU company, and now we're sending over babies. It's complicated, but that's exactly the roadmap we took.
That's awesome.
And when you look at the different areas that you can ship to, what does the EU look like for you? I mean, obviously this is a big market with a lot of numbers, but there's a lot of challenges and 28 different member states. So how do you look at that kind of market and then compare it to other markets that might be easier or at least less regulatory?
We deal with the processors, the larger processors. So you look at where the large processors are, they usually start processing in areas that are easy for customs clearance and biomass, coming in. So, I mean, Poland is huge, obviously. I'm seeing a lot of other countries jump on that I didn't expect. immediately, but
Well, such as,
Your
UK,
Romania,
Italy,
your Croatia, Serbia, a lot of the Eastern Bloc countries are hot right now. Right? They're
Bulgaria.
easy
I've
to-
got a huge client in Bulgaria
Exactly.
now. Who knew? You know.
Right.
so they would, so your, I mean, this is very interesting. So your Eastern European clients are maybe importing product that they cannot get in the EU, and then are those people then processing the biomass into something else that they can export? I mean, do you have any sense of what the business is?
I would
Sometimes within
assume
their
that's what they're
country.
doing. I don't
Yeah.
think they're just keeping the biomass and it's going to labs. I know what they're doing. I'm not asking because they're publicly traded companies. Those are their secrets. But
Right.
we definitely ship to everybody's licensed, everybody's approved, customs is happy. We ship it to them and they process it into whatever they're processing for. I've seen a lot though of our EU companies are processing at such a standard like EU GMP compliance, so we can then ship to Asia. So a lot of it's not staying in Europe. We're shipping it there, moving it to Asia as an EU GMP product.
So who in the US is GMP certified at this point?
Not US GMP, EU GMP. Now, it's different in the US, and I know you and I have spoken about this before. Farms can't be GMP certified, they're GAP certified, and a lot of people are GAP certified. There's a couple of processing plants right now that have got EU GMP certification specialists out to get them pre-cleared. I believe one's already finished. So there are EU GMP certified labs here. There's GAP certified farms, and we send over the highest quality product that's cleared and pre-approved and in the EU basis to the EU. That's how we set it apart.
Right. So do you send any stuff that is not GMP to Europe? I mean, there is you are sending all GAP certified product from the US.
We're sending, I mean, and it depends on what farm we're going from. All of it is the highest quality product you can get out of the US. They have to clear. What you don't get is when it stays in the US, it's fine. You can bicker, you can deal, wheel and deal. But when you put it on a boat, that full panel COA has to be the cleanest thing they've ever seen. And that's why we ship it to several location labs to test it for us. There can't be any issues with this product. And so we have the COAs, we send it over, and everything's pre-cleared. And then, it goes from there. EU makes products and we ship it out to makeup companies or, wherever the end part is going. And it's happening out of South America right now. South America is sending stuff up to the EU. We're just doing it papered, and we make sure it's completely compliant.
And does that matter? Because, you're growing in the US now, but like you said, South America is doing a lot of growing. So will you facilitate that, or will you only focus on what's coming out of the US?
Oh no, we work worldwide. George works, he just finished a Brazil deal. We've worked with Uruguay, George, you can jump in. Jamaica deal.
Jamaica, Colombia.
Colombia's huge.
Looking at your crystal ball, like, do you, because I know you have one, do you see those sort of movements where like US was hot, now it's going to South America, what's going on in Canada? Like, where do you think is hot as far as those types of markets?
I think the best CBD is coming out of the Americas, whether that's North America or South America. I mean, it's ample growing and the farmers know what they're doing and they're kicking out some killer product. The market in the US is much different than the EU. EU, because of the percentage THC and the seed that you have to use, it's a much lower CBD. The US, I mean, you talk to processors, they want 14%, minimum, 12, 14%, 16%. I've seen South America stuff hit 20, it's crazy. But you've got EU, we're shooting, 7, 8, 9. So we're shooting for the higher end. It's hard to find that in the EU right now. I mean, you guys are mostly moving around 3-4% CBD, and it takes processors 2 to 3 times longer and much more biomass to process it into 1 kilo of anything. So the fact that we can have compliant product brought over that meets or exceeds what the processors are using now, they might have, here's what they're doing, and I know what they're doing, well, a few of them, they're using our really good CBD that's pre-approved, that's exceeding any of the rules and regulations over there, and they're mixing it with what they have. They're not going to throw out their biomass, and they're not going to throw out the farmers that got contracts with. They're mixing it so they can process CBD a lot faster, and cut down their bottom line so they can be profitable.
So the blend is better than their own stuff.
Oh, I mean, if you've got between 1 and 3% sitting there that you're going to process, that takes you forever, and I can throw in some 8 on top of it, it makes life a lot easier.
Well, I think that that is probably where what you're hitting is a place where the regulations, I don't want to say fail because you're taking it up a notch, but you're hitting a place where the regulations have not really been able to define what is going on. I mean, I think that there are a lot of people, I would say the majority, if not most people in this business right now within Europe are really pretty peeved about the regulatory, I would say, procedure of where novel food has gone. It is stupid. I mean, I will say that directly. It is stupid to say that.
Marguerite's peeved, but just for the record.
Well, I mean, if you're really going to set regulation on science, which is what we all want to see here, right? I mean, I would say that that's the best way to continue to move cannabis forward as a regulated plant, right? There is no difference of a cannabinoid that is extracted from a seed versus a plant versus, a flower. There is none, right? I mean, there are issues with extraction processes. Certainly, do you use butane? Do you use ethanol? Do you use CO2 extraction? Okay, fair enough. There are all sorts of safety issues that fall under that. But what I think is interesting about what you're doing is that you appear to have found a bridge between, on the European side, growers who cannot get funding because they can't figure out what on earth it is that they're supposed to be doing, and saying, is it novel food? Is it, should I get, I don't know, bio certification? And in the meantime, there clearly is a need, and that seems to be what you're filling, is that people are saying, okay, well, I'm processing this way. I'm using biomass, so I'm assuming it's not just obviously from seeds, it's plants and flowers and etc. It's trim. So you're creating a market and finding a market in something that almost cannot be done by growers here, which I think is also—
Marguerite, that's still on the shoulders of the product developer, right? That company. We're saving them money, which hopefully makes it cheaper for the consumer, right? Once again, so the consumer, it's more exposure to the customer, the client, right? Their client. We're just making life easier, as Sarah said. A lot of these things, the Novel Food Act, et cetera, are on the shoulders of, yes, some of our clients. But if they're able to save money and have it where their machinery is not breaking down and maintenance issues, we're kind of going into, stability issues here, right? So that then they can better address whatever Novel Food Act, fees. It's $300,000 or something, a lot, so that they can operate a lot more freely. And we're helping them to do that. We're still on the solution side. So
right,
yeah,
and I think the difference right now in the farming, and you're right, there's not an ample supply in Europe of what the processors need to be competitive with the US or with Asia. There's just not enough. And it's because most of the grows are outside. And when they're outside and you have different temperature, I had a Bulgaria guy who's growing who said, Sarah, I know you can't get more than 6% off our seeds because I'm growing out, I'm growing this and we have the best people on the grounds. And I believe him. Amazing company, but it's all outdoors and you're, at the mercy of nature. And it does affect the plant a lot. Most of US, not most, but there are a ton of US growers who know how to do it indoors now, and they can do 4 full cycles or more annually, and they can completely make that plant as perfect as it needs to be. And I think until EU goes more to an indoor grow style, we're going to produce better plants that are compliant in the US, in the South America, and they're going to have it imported in to mix with their crop. And we're not going to mess up the farmers in the EU. The farmers are still going to be needed because they're going to be able to, get all the base crop in, and then we'll fulfill, we'll bring in the 7, 8, 9, 10%, let them mix and process.
Fascinating.
And then you have
Patrick,
other emerging markets. You have Africa, North and South Africa, that's coming into play. You have the Middle East, Lebanon, Israel, right? That's where we're discussing how,
Israel's
with Greece,
huge.
we have, so, and genetics in those parts of the world too are advancing like leaps and bounds. And that's a whole nother topic, is genetics, once again, going into education, no farmer left behind, basically. We're just helping to supplement, what is going wrong to enhance what's going right for Europe.
Well, and
I think that's where Europe's clog is right now. They have to have these certain seeds. And here in the States, and I'll take Oklahoma for an example, they started their program. And if you had seeds that were compliant and you could prove genetics and they were compliant to that state, it took 6 weeks and they'd add them to the chart. That way everybody could participate. And it wasn't, 18 seeds that were allowed, because that's what's hurting Europe right now. If they would allow any seeds that were compliant, we could get them better genetics. Those farmers could be growing 10, 12% CBD plants that are still hitting 0.2 requirement.
But again, I mean, and this is where I'm really curious about how you guys are succeeding. And I know that we're going to run out of time on this phone call before we get there, because of course, part of normal food regulation in Europe is about seed source. Right. So what I think is interesting is, however, I mean, and again, I mean, novel food has not worked. And I think that cannabis is one of those perfect examples to show where the idea behind, keeping, I don't know, as the British call it, chlorinated chicken, or the cannabis version of chlorinated chicken, out of the European market, seems to be working in a model, in other words, where farmers here are growing certain kinds of crops. The market is regulating, I would say, recreational / novel food versus GMP. The whole discussion, though, about how much of a percentage you're actually growing in your CBD plant is one discussion, and then how you're extracting it is another, and what you are using to actually extract from is a third issue, just on the recreational side, and that's beyond, indoor GMP medically certified. So what I think is actually happening, and this is why it was really great to have you on, and the level of detail and your experience and just talking about what you do is fascinating. And I hope it will be for our listeners who sort of listen to this later and download it, is that I think a lot of the people I talk to, just who get in touch with me and say, Marguerite, do you know anything? Or do you know somebody who does this? Or is that the regulations are fierce. They are clearly there. But the people in the market who are succeeding are saying, okay, well, we know perfectly well that not all the CBD that's being processed and sold in Europe is coming from European sources or is being grown in EU, bio plants. It is coming in through these ways. The government is letting it happen. There's all sorts of certification. And I think that, it's not that you guys are, it sounds like you're doing everything right and checking all those boxes. But this is actually a third way for this kind of product to enter the market, certainly on the export side, because the case law increasingly is saying, unfortunately or fortunately, you're more protected as a CBD product or CBD biomass if you're imported from somewhere else. How odd is that? I mean, there's no rhyme or reason. But that's why I thought that what you guys are doing is absolutely super, super interesting and ahead of the mix. I mean, a lot of people, for example, I talk to in Europe, for example, are trying to grow it here as well as ship it within Europe. And I think that you are one of the companies, at least that I've gotten a sense of as I talk to you and Josh in particular, who is kind of finding, like I said, that third way, which is absolutely awesome, which is why we had you on. Patrick, do you have any more questions? We are now at the, I would say, within the 5-minute mark of a very fascinating hour-long conversation with SovereignPort, who I would say is actually one of the few specialty countries that I have found in this space as a professional who's actually doing what you're doing.
So, I mean, I guess the last question I would have is, part of what you're doing, you said, is education. So what is the message when you're trying to educate governments that resonates for them, that encourages to support this?
I think a lot of the major issues in the beginning were UN, WHO, what they would think of certain classifications, and they had the wrong classifications. Like Uruguay was trying to export off the wrong classification, and they thought, they were going to get in trouble on a worldwide scale. And so it's just education. It's showing them that this is classified CBD, because there's no THC properties, or it's within regulations, is classified as industrial hemp, and that's what we have to work with. That's what this gets shipped back and forth as, it's just education. It's education, but working inside. When you educate a country, you have to educate them inside their laws, and so it's always tricky. Everyone's a little different. Uruguay was easy. It was a classification issue, whereas Germany is not easy. There's no education. They're constantly educating us. Like, no, we've decided if there's one leaf in it, we're throwing it away. Okay, all right. Well, then let's go back and re-examine the products we're bringing in. So, George probably knows more than I do.
As far as educating the governments, you're not really educating them. I think we really need to form relationships with those officials, so they understand that what they're getting is something that they can examine and their backs are covered. Because at the end of the day, they're just people trying to feed their kids just like us. And when you approach them in that way, and you validate their regulations as understandable for their country and for their citizenry, and you work within those parameters, you're going to open a lot of doors, because you're not coming in a clash, and you can't just bum rush their border and say, hey, here I am, I'm American, I can do whatever I want because it's legal there now. No, you have to give them the respect that they're due as government officials, as in a foreign government, to be able to move forward in a dialogue that's beneficial to everybody.
So you're almost like cannabis ambassadors.
I would hope to say that. Thank you very much. And that's a title I will gladly take.
And that's actually a really good title to leave with, I think. Thank you very much. We do very much appreciate your time.
Absolutely. Well, just to sort of wrap this up, we have been joined by the adventurers, entrepreneurs and innovators of SovereignPort today here on Clearly Cannabis. We will be back in 2 more weeks. In the meantime, hopefully, we will also pick up other listeners and viewers on our various channels that we are going to disseminate this on. But I think that it is very clear that we are going to be hearing a lot more of these swashbucklers from SovereignPort. And
I'm missing the eye patch.
Where's your parrot, right?
Really just moving your face mask.
Right?
Eye patch, face mask. Okay. On that note, again, thank you all so much. Thank you again, Patrick, for making this possible. And onwards and I guess forward greenly. We will see you again in 2 weeks. Take care, everybody.
Bye, everybody. Happy 4th. Take care.
Thank you very much. Thank you. Bye.